Place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and our guest today is Melanie and Jenifer. And you're here because we get to talk about failure. Failure is the theme of Tuesday, and today is Melanie and Jenifer Day to tell us about their failure. So, if you don't mind, Melanie, let me start with you, Melanie. If you don't mind, tell us
Okay.
where you're hailing from, where you specialize in, how you add
Okay.
value to the world, and who you've been a hero to.
Okay. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I am a weight loss and clutter coach. I help people lose weight by removing the physical, the mental, the digital, the emotional clutter in their lives.
Mm. And who you been a hero to?
Who have I been a hero to?
Or who are you being a hero to?
I hope my kids would say I'm a hero. I think my cats think I'm a hero when I feed them. Um, but I think I'm a hero to thousands of people that I've helped lose weight.
Mm. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Not many folks see themselves as hero to others, and it's good to find people that are adding that kind of value to the world. How about you, Jenifer? Where you hailing from? Or where you specialize in? Or you adding value to the world, and who you being a hero to?
I am from Chicago, and I'm currently outside in a suburb, and I am a trauma-informed somatic coach,
Mm.
and also an author and an artist. And yeah, I'm hopefully a hero to my kids, like Melanie said. I think so, and hopefully my clients too. I've gotten a lot of great feedback, so I'm hoping to really, yeah, change some people's lives.
Well, I think we're gonna do that today, uh, Jenifer. And I would like to know about your artistry. You mentioned artist. Did you draw that picture behind you? Is that yours?
I did. Yeah, no, I wish. No, yeah, that's a great castle in Ireland, but no, I didn't. But no, I'm actually, I've always drawn, but I actually started this year painting, and
Mm.
I'm absolutely loving painting. So, yeah, that's my journey thus far. After writing and writing for some for authoring my book, and then writing for a horror TTPRG role playing game, a
Mm.
tabletop role playing game.
Mhm.
That was just kind of thrown in my lap. So doing that and painting, yeah. So that's my current art.
What does painting do for you?
You know what? I really think it allows my inner children to come out and play in a way that they don't normally get to.
Mm.
So it's really a joyful thing for me. It's a really peaceful and calm and just joy bringing thing for me.
Mm. I like that. Painting and writing. Put those together, a lot of reflection right there, right?
Yeah,
Reflecting and put it on paper too.
yeah.
Interesting. You got any hobbies there, Melanie?
I'm sorry.
You got any hobbies?
Um, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. My biggest hobby is gymnastics, although I'll talk about that when we talk about failure. And while I cannot do like the real thing anymore, I'll turn a cartwheel like for anybody, anytime, anywhere. My it's my passion actually. I don't know if it's a hobby,
Mm.
if it's something that you just love so bad that you can't keep away from it. So like the Olympics. Or like my favorite time every 4 years is the Summer Olympics, so that I can get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watch events that are happening in Paris in the middle of the day.
Mm.
Awesome.
Okay. So what is your biggest failure that you wanna let out of
Oh,
let the cat out of the bag today? Yeah.
I did, didn't I? I was a competitive gymnast growing up and training very high level, like 5, 6 days a week, 4 or 5 hours a day, and another day for competition season. And I loved it. I loved tumbling. I loved swinging. Loved dancing. I loved flying through the air. What I did not love was the toxic scrutiny over the scale. I was no skinny gymnast, I was built like Simone Biles, only taller and not quite as built.
Mm.
And while that's really prominent in gymnastics now, in the 70s and 80s, it was not. And I got called piggy, I got called fatty, really awful things from the grown-ups in my life. The people that were supposed to motivate me really were
Mm.
demotivating me. And I had received college offers and decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And for many, many, many years, I said I quit. Like if anybody asked me about my gymnastics career, I said I quit, I quit, I quit. And at some point in my 30s, that shifted. Let me give a little detail. So first of all, I quit gymnastics and then I gained weight, like a ton of weight. When I turned 30, I was over 200 pounds. I'm a
Mm.
short gymnast. And it was almost like I hit the 30 milestone and 200 pounds, like almost like on the same day. And I think I had just given up. And I didn't remember, I didn't know who I was. I spent so many years being known as Melanie the gymnast, or in my parents' names, Barry's little superstar, Cindy's, champion. And I spent a long time not really knowing who I was. I hit 30 and I was like, that's it. I don't want to be a fat mother. I don't want to be an attractive wife. I don't want my weight to precede me or be my identity. So I joined a weight loss plan and I lost 65 pounds and started taking gymnastics classes again. And a woman in her 30s taking gymnastics isn't very common.
Mhm.
But literally, that was the time where I stopped using the word quit and said stopped. Like, there's a big difference between the concept of stopping something and quitting something. And I think part of it was I was paying for the classes, I was taking the classes. Like, I wasn't doing it for a college scholarship to go to the Olympics or to make my parents happy. And it was the most fun that I had ever had, irrespective of my 12-year gymnastics competition life. So I feel like the failure came from the vocabulary, like the words I was using.
Mhm.
The words I was using were determining how I feel, and how I felt led to no action, not taking care of my body and stuff like that.
Mm. How many people, by the way, thank you for sharing. How many people know about this intimate part of your story?
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I know if I talk about perceived failure, because that's what it was when I quit gymnastics at almost 18. It was a perceived failure as opposed to like moving on to the next chapter or moving on to the next step. And so once I discovered that, it was really important for me to share that with other people. And shortly after losing my weight, I became a weight loss. I've been a weight loss coach for over 20 years. And it was a very important story to tell, so that people who didn't believe in themselves, people who lacked self-confidence, could hear my journey and help them believe that they can do it too, no matter where the starting point is, and no matter where the ending point is. But at least, my being honest about that was only going to serve my clients well, you
Mm.
know. Um, yeah, I think it's really important to be honest about that.
Well, thank you for sharing. So if I had to ask you, so what is the message to that 15 or 16-year-old gymnast that you had to speak to? Because I'm assuming that person that was inside of you that was 16 or 15, you had to speak to that person. What were you telling them?
I would start by giving her a hug. I don't think that there were enough like true hugs, as opposed to like the little pat on the back, like, oh, great job. I would give her a huge hug. I would say things like it gets better. Um, and I would tell her it's okay, whatever it was in that moment. But I would definitely say it's okay to stop. Um, and I think I would also tell her, and it's okay to miss it.
Mm.
Um, because I could watch gymnastics and cry my eyes out. I'm so proud of our team. Both the women's and the men's gymnastics teams are going to rock it this year. And I used to cry for the girl who didn't make it. I used to cry for the Melanie who didn't reach her dreams. Now I just cry because I'm a mom, and moms cry when special things happen. And like I could cry. LeBron James is carrying the American flag at the opening ceremonies. Like all that stuff will make me cry, but it's a good cry versus the kind of cry that came before.
When I ask you that question, who you want to be a hero to?
Mhm.
when you was talking about that 15-year-old you or that 10-year-old you, I think right now I can feel you being a hero to that young lady in your history. And I'm
Thank
curious
you.
about you, Jennifer. What thoughts are showing up for you right now? Listen to Melanie's story.
I loved hearing that, and I just love, you can just see like the joy she has when talking about it. And I also get like a real sense of like calm grounding around it. Like she's really discovered the power she has now and how to frame it and look at it in a way that allows her to be compassionate to her younger self, but also really hopeful and joyful for what's coming forward. So yeah, I mean, it's like how much better can you get than that, really? That's like some serious work and some serious awareness, and that's awesome.
Hmm.
Thank you.
I felt that too. How about you, Jennifer? How is your relationship with failure?
Um, it's really funny because as I was thinking about this along the way, I was like, do I call this failure? And I kind of do. It's like what's wrapped up for me. It's been a long grief journey for me, actually. And what's wrapped up for me around the failure is that I think I look at it as a failure, but not 100% me failure. So it's like what I've gleaned in the last few years is that I have really struggled around the concept of my childhood wounding and not having ever really understood how impactful it had been in my life, right? And so I kind of call that a failure to recognize. But obviously, when we talk about trauma and even the little T's, big T's, abuse, neglect, all those kinds of things, there's a lack of awareness a lot of times because there's so much pain, right? And so a lot of times our parts will show up and they're really, really big protective parts. And they don't want to allow us to see what's really painful. And so my failure, I think, was what I did is I sunk myself into working very, very hard to be loved my whole life. Like I just took on
Hmm.
this function of like, I'm just going to work harder than anybody else. I'm going to do more than anybody else. So I feel worthy. And so I feel like I could be loved. And I think that I didn't recognize that for so long. It really caused a lot of chaos in my life for myself above anyone else. And so, in the last 4 years of doing some really serious, deep trauma work, I've been confronted with things that I had never really even considered. And so now it's like the journey for me forward is to continue to bring this awareness and hope for other people so they can see how these things impact their lives and kind of make them suffer, right? And a lot of times in a way needlessly, because if we can get to parts of ourselves and we can be compassionate with our younger selves, then we really can bring awareness and show up in the world in an authentic way that we're not able to when we have all of these other moving pieces operating.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that too. Wow, I see we're gonna get along well today. Yeah. Okay, so tell me, Jennifer. You say you work very hard for love. So if you could tell us what part of you was the hardest to love, or what part of you was the hardest for people to love?
Okay, so I think the hardest for me to love was just the really wounded child, right? Because I didn't really want to see her. Like, I
Mm,
didn't want to see how wounded she was. And so it was very difficult for me to bring her forward and kind of look at her all the time and hear the things that she was saying because I wanted to pretend all that pain didn't exist.
mm,
And then I think that the hardest part for people to love was the part of me that kind of showed up in a really fierce way. Um, so when my kids struggled at times, I have 4 kids, and one is diagnosed with a serious mental illness, one has autism. And so when I would go to meetings and things, I was very much like, no, no, this is what's happening. Like
mm,
there was no room for anyone else's opinion. I was like, no, this. Because that part of me that got activated that was so protective of my kids I really wasn't willing to hear a lot other people had to say. And at times that was good, and at times it wasn't good, because it really, like, you don't want to go into things when your kids are involved in a contentious way, right? You sort of want to be open and a bit flexible. And I wasn't able to show up that way because I was just like, you're not going to hurt my kids, right? Like, I'm going to protect them from anything that you're going to do, not really realizing at some point some of the people actually were really well intentioned, right?
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think that's the hard to love part.
Mm. What's on your mind here, Melanie?
Um, oh my God, so many things. I mean, I think the first thing that I really heard was that idea of like trying to bottle it up, like I'm not going to address this. I'm not going to experience these feelings. I'm going to push them down as far as I possibly can. And every time I did that, I did it with food. But then the other thing that I hear as a parent, I hear loud and clear is I am not going to let other people hurt my kids the way I was hurt. Which often, like they call it a mama bear for a reason.
Mm.
But mama bear doesn't always get what she wants and needs. Ah, you see, I love it. I love it. Every tattoo that we have tells a story of our lives.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that it can be really hard to protect your kids. And we probably don't want to protect them against everything because they have to grow up on their own and blah, blah, blah. My kids are in their 20s. So, like, either I did a great job or I screwed up. But whatever happened, that's where we are now. But for sure, like, I definitely hear I wasn't addressing it when I was young. I'm addressing it now. And I'm going to make sure that this isn't like a thing going forward.
Mm. Is it possible that all this protection that we are putting out is really protecting us, not the kids themselves?
Mm-hmm.
You felt that was happening for you, Jenifer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because honestly, I was sort of enmeshed a little bit, right? I was identifying so heavily with my kids that I wasn't allowed or allowing myself to be in my wise self, right? Because I was simultaneously protecting them and the little inner wounded me,
Mm.
right?
And what was your biggest takeaway from recognizing that protection is
Uh,
not the only way?
right, exactly. And I think that there's a lot of freedom in not controlling things because really that's an illusion anyway, right? So if you don't believe you have to control everything, then you're open to so much more happening that's good.
Mm. You shaking your head, Melanie?
I agree 100%. Yes, yes, yes. But and the other piece of it is like that whole control thing. I'm a very black and white, all or nothing thinker. So it's like if I say yes, I'm all in. If I say no, don't even try again. And it's not a great thing to teach our kids. And our kids learn more by watching us than they learn, by what we do or say to them. And, so trying to gain that control, if they see that like that's our need, that becomes their need. And it's a hard thing to shake, really hard thing to shake.
Hmm. Well, here's what I'm hearing. We're trying to figure out the theme of the day around failure. So I'm trying to pull out of this entire experience that both you have had, that you specialize into something that you've had a difficult time with over your life, and now you specialize in that same thing to kind of help people rescue them at least from some of those mistakes you've made over your lifetime. Now,
Mhm.
how the thing you specialize in right now, Jenifer, like why is that so important for you right now? Really?
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. And actually, it'll tap into something you just said. I don't want to rescue anybody. I
Hmm.
want to empower everybody. I want to give everybody agency over themselves to understand that they can do anything they choose. They just have to get rid of some of the blocks and beliefs, long held beliefs that they have, right? Because in the end of the day, you can only rescue yourself. You can't really rescue anyone else.
Hmm. Now we're getting somewhere. So if you're into empowerment, What are your process for empowerment?
So my biggest thing, right? And I don't want to knock anybody, but like I chose not to be a therapist on purpose. Okay. I chose to go the coaching route. And the reason I chose to do that is I feel like the therapists are very limited in the way they're allowed to operate. And I didn't want that for my clients. And
Mm,
so I chose to go the coaching route because I'm able to kind of sit and be just a compassionate container, a safe space, and a mirror for my clients. Like, all I want to do is bring them to themselves. And when I do that, that's where all the work is. I don't have any answers that my clients don't have. They have all the answers, right? But it's my job to just allow them to see what's in front of them. And I can't do that unless I work really hard on myself, because my
mhm,
judgments, anything getting in the way just gets in the way. Right. So yeah, my whole process is to really work hard on my own trauma, which I have, and then also every day be grounded and centered as much as possible. So when I show up for my clients, it's a relationship. Our nervous systems are in sync, and they're really seeing what's there without all this extraneous stuff going on. No advice, no whatever, just here's what is, and how do we look at that, and how do we work with that.
mm. Something that's why I love coaching too, same as you both have, because I recognize, I call it the slave certificate. No, nothing against the therapists or those folks that go get their degree, right? It's a slave certificate because you end up in a system where you can't really do maneuver the way you want to, which I recognize when it comes to self-education or coaching, so forth and so on. It's like a freedom certificate. Now I get the freedom to really tap into people the way I've tapped into myself. And you can't really help somebody on something that you haven't helped yourself with. It's impossible as a coach. Like they're gonna tell, like, oh no, you're not the person, because you're gonna show them exactly who you are in the process of showing them exactly who they are. And if you haven't discovered it in yourself, you can't really coach them on it.
Right.
You got to discover it first. So, you got your freedom certificate there, Melanie. What is your process?
Well, I mean, I would love to piggyback on what you both just said, because I always say that I'm not in the business of giving advice. I'm in the business of asking questions, because a lot of great advice. Like I believe, like I have all these really great ideas, but they worked for me. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that they work for other people. And so, if someone flat out asks me for advice, whether it's like, what's a good thing to have for breakfast in the morning, or, what's a great strategy for clearing off my desk, I have good ideas, but I need to ask them the right questions so that they can figure it out for themselves, like you said, and feel more confident, because you're going to feel more confident in doing the thing that you thought of, as opposed to, well, Melanie said it really works when she has yogurt and granola. What if you don't like granola?
Right.
What if you're lactose intolerant? Like all of those things then get in the way. I'm lactose intolerant, so I have a different kind of yogurt. But I think at the end of the day, um, I could tell my story over and over again. And I tell my story to empower people, but not have them do it exactly the way that I did it.
Mhm. I'm curious, by the way, Melanie. You got a lot of history behind you. Tell me about that history. You got a
Are
lot
you
of
talking about
pictures.
the photos?
Yeah, you do. You have a lot of
Oh,
photos.
are you ready? Hold on. If I'm allowed, they go far up. So, one of the reasons I love this is history and family history. My husband's family, my family, both sides of my family, both sides of his family. There's a lot of divorce and remarriage. So there's like a lot of people back there. And I like knowing that they're like on my shoulder. Like it's
Mm,
almost like, they're with me at all times. The other piece of it is, as someone who's a clutter coach, some people might look at that and go, wow, look at the clutter of all of those photographs. But I am a values based clutter coach, which
mm,
means it is about finding the level that works for you. And for some people, stuff is really important. Their stuff has energy and it connects them to a time, a place, a person. And for others, there isn't as strong a connection. but the needing to hang on to things because they remind us of someone, the memories are within us. The memories aren't in the things. I just find pictures are easier for me to kind of like experience a memory or remember a story or remember a time. When I look at a photograph of the person, I tell people all the time, I do not believe in minimalism for me.
Hmm.
For other people, like that very Scandinavian, like all blonde wood and
Mhm.
painted white and all of that works for some people, but I like color, clearly. And I like things. It's just a matter of getting rid of the things that are getting in the way of you living a more meaningful life with less,
Hmm.
because stuff gets in the way sometimes.
When I look at your background, this was shows for me. You know, I often tell people that your history is your intellectual property. Your experience is your IP. So when you sit back and go back into your own story, your own journey, recognize exactly what happened to you, examine it, assess it, and take the best from it moving forward, then you really have a lot of value. Because oftentimes we don't recognize that, if you don't have confidence in your history, you won't have confidence in your future. If you have a broken
Right.
past, you will still have a broken future. Doesn't matter how much future universe gives you, you still have a broken future because you don't understand your history. So when I saw your wall, your picture, your timeline behind you, I was like, this is a woman that respects history, understands history, love history. So what has you what is in your IP right now that you want to share with us when it comes to failure?
It's interesting because some of the history behind me is not my history because it's my husband's history,
Mm-hmm.
but I find it as meaningful because his path and my path met at some point, right? Like I talked about the word basheret before. Like we found each other and it's all these different pieces of our path. Had I continued with gymnastics, had I gone to college and done gymnastics, I never would have met my husband.
Mm.
So at the same time that is like, was such a perceived failure for me. Thank goodness I made that decision, or I wouldn't have my husband, I wouldn't have my two daughters, or I'd have different daughters. I don't know. But that at the end of the day, I have great respect for, like the circuitous path that we take in life. Nothing we do is a straight line. Nothing we do is a straight line. And that's a good thing.
Mm. What about you, Jennifer? What about your IP?
I think that really, I've had some relatives in my past that were very gifted and connected, and I sort of inherited that gift.
Mm.
And it seems like I've passed it on to a few of my kids as well. And so I think that really my sense of never really being alone, because I have like a very strong connection to the other side. Um, Kind of plays out in my life in a lot of ways. And as I've sort of healed a lot of the perceived failure that's gone on, I get to see more and more of it unfolding. And so, yeah, I think that just being open to every process that comes in, whether it's in the physical realm or in the spiritual realm, has really opened my world quite a bit.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing. Now, if you got to tell us what is your big vision, what would you share with us based on how you've learned so far? What is your big vision?
Me or Melanie?
You, Jennifer. Jennifer.
Me, my big vision. Honestly, I think that healing so much of the stuff that's gone on and kind of really finally being with all the grief that I've never processed is now allowing room for joy that could never get in before. And that's something that I keep talking to my clients about. I'm like, you just won't even understand that until you grieve everything that's happened, you don't quite have the room for joy and you don't even trust that it's there. But as you open yourself up more, you'll find it. And so, yeah, moving forward, I just keep just trying to make as much room for joy as I possibly can.
Joy. Okay. What about you, Melanie? What's your big vision?
I just first want to say that I love that. That having to be open in order to receive, I think is a big takeaway. Ah, my big picture is all about clutter these days. The clutter are the things that we say to ourselves that's not true, the self-limiting beliefs. The clutter is my calendar and the gazillion things that need to happen. My clutter is the, 9,000 pictures on my phone. And of those 9,000, like 2,200 of them look exactly like the picture before it and the picture before that. We all exist. I work with clients and they say, I don't have clutter. I just really need to lose weight. And then we talk a little bit. And then all of a sudden they realize exactly how much clutter they have, whether it's physical, the tchotchkes and things that were given or 9,000 photos behind us, or the digital clutter, the mental clutter, like, I mentioned, physical clutter, financial clutter. There are so many things that get in the way of our living a more meaningful life. And once we can extract some of those things in a timely manner, like don't go into the office and plan on cleaning it all out in one day. Just take something very small. So I think my big picture things are like baby steps, like ridiculously simple steps, setting goals that like sound silly to say out loud, but those are the things that we achieve quickly, make us feel good. We pat ourselves on the back, and then we're ready for potentially a more complex goal. And I think that's another reason I want to piggyback on what you said before. What I love about being a coach is we're not spending a ton of time in the past, but rather planning for the future. What are the steps that I need to take? Let me be asked all the right questions by my coach, and then make a plan for going forward. I think that's also what is limiting in the world of therapy, is like focusing on the future more than focusing on the past.
Hmm. But we in America, I was born and raised in Jamaica, so when I got to America, I kind of see a different kind of culture. And I think our culture in America is a very hoarding culture, a very accumulating culture. They like to accumulate a lot of things. So I think you have a really big market for your business, but I think you also have a big cultural challenge with the mindset of Americans, where they like to have a lot of things. I never seen a culture that likes to hold on to things like American. So now, how do you battle that kind of culture, dear Melanie?
Well, do you mean the consumerist culture we live in? Do you know that
Mm-hmm.
there are more storage units in the United States than in all other countries combined?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. Oh my
It
God.
it the problem is that significant, and it's interesting because if you talk to Americans, they need bigger homes, they need bigger rooms, they need bigger closets, they need bigger bathrooms, like it's the Western expansion or something like that. And so it is a big challenge. But I think that when we really focus on, keeping the things that impact our lives, they enhance our life in some way. If you can't tell me that this highlighter enhances your life in some way, let it go.
Mm.
So what I have found is it depends on the questions I'm asking people, and so if I was trying to get rid of this pen, I might ask questions like, would I buy it again if I were in a store? If I was moving, would I take it with me? Would I notice if it's spontaneously combusted, or would I miss it if it's spontaneously combusted? When I start asking myself all the right questions, every once in a while, we're like, yeah, this is about the stupidest thing I own. I need to let it go. This definitely sounds like oversimplification because the answers don't necessarily come that quickly. But once I learn the questions to ask myself, then I can clutter anything away.
Mm. So what happens to your clientele when they get into your space and start going through the things? What happens for them when they start letting go?
I relief. It's like I help people lose physical weight, but that's also losing or alleviating a huge weight on us. The clutter is weight, as the same as the fat is weight. So there's a lot of relief involved, and I
Mm.
find more people are likely to feel that relief than to feel fear, that they got rid of the wrong thing. If something costs thousands of dollars, I'm not going to recommend that you get rid of it without like really thinking about it. But if something costs less than $20 to replace, let it go. What's the worst thing that happens? You buy a newer version of it or you buy it again. And so, yeah, that theoretical weight being lifted off of your shoulders is a really big part of it. And if you really want to make like a tight connection to weight loss, clutter is stress. I'm stressed. And a lot of us, when we're stressed, we eat, we drink, we smoke, we do all the things that don't fix the problem, just like exacerbate it. And my favorite example is if you've got a messy kitchen, if it's full of too much stuff, you are not getting out the cutting board and the knife and the fruits and the vegetables and all the healthy things you're ordering in.
Hmm.
So releasing all of the stuff helps us lose weight.
Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Melanie. And I know Jenifer, you mentioned earlier about your book. If you don't mind telling us about your book and how you get that project going.
Oh, yeah. So last year I wrote a book. It's called Necessary Grief. And it's basically my journey through trauma and the ending of my 27-year relationship last year. And all the modalities in trauma that I use to kind of get myself through. And I just, in the book, it's sort of part memoir and then also part explanation of the modalities so that it opens it up to people so that they can understand if they're going through something similar. These are modalities that they can look at and use. And it kind of explains how they're used so they have some kind of picture for it. And my hope was just to kind of, obviously starting over at 53 is a journey in
Mhm.
itself, and a lot of people go through divorce in their 50s, a lot of women, and just bringing that stuff to them and giving them some resources. My hope was to, just create some support.
You said 27 years.
Mhm.
Did that feel like a failure?
Oh, well, sure, of course. But again, I have to be right. I have to be within myself and looking at it through a trauma lens. I know it's not, right? Like I know that to be true that it's not, but there's always a part that's
Mm.
kind of like knocking at you going, here we are again, right? And so then my job is to go, well, where is that part and how do I work with that part and how do I support that part? Because they're seeing it from a belief perspective and I'm seeing it from a truth perspective. So if I'm in my big S self, as Dick Schwartz would say, I'm able to be wise and say, hey, that's just a part of me and we just need to sit and work with that part a little bit.
Mm. What was the process like when you was writing your book? Like what was some of the things that was very hard to put on paper and process for you when you was writing your book?
I think what was interesting is I actually didn't intend it to be a book. I actually sat out on my back patio and I just wrote what was happening for me every single day
Mm.
because somebody like kind of walking out the door one day and not ever coming back after 27 years is something that's very difficult. And so I was just kind of like, what's happening? And I was just kind of all in my feelings and all that stuff. And then I started to realize as I went along, oh, okay, this is actually a book, right? And so I just kind of put everything together and I went a little bit back into my childhood to give people some context. And yeah, it was a rough process. I mean, to be honest, it was really kind of brutal. But I think that is the beauty of it because I was my most vulnerable self because I was talking to myself. I wasn't talking to anybody else. And so I was allowing myself to be real, authentic, and genuine. And then when I started to put it out, I was like, I'm leaving it, right? I'm just leaving it all out there because this is what it was and this is who I was through this. And I think it's resonated a lot with people. I mean, that's the feedback I'm getting. And so I love that because I don't think we can show up as our authentic self and ever be wrong if we're doing that.
Mm. I'm listening. I can feel a liberation, from like putting out there things that are failure, things that just happen to us that we would probably wish differently, but then we still gotta accept what happens because the universe is making a decision too. And then when you get into that space and you recognize that, you say, okay, all right, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's liberating to kind of go through and tell it now because you feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Melanie and Jenifer, we're gonna wrap up. And if somebody hear you right now, Jenifer, and like, wow, Jenifer, you are my hero. I would love to work with you. How can I work with you?
They could really just go to my website, which is www.courageousawareness.co. And I have my email and my number on there. And I'm certainly also on Instagram as Courageous Awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
I would love anybody to reach out. And yeah, love to work with anybody who's willing.
Hmm. Why the word courage, by the way?
That it's the most courageous thing, I think, to like go deep in yourself and to unearth all the pain and stuff that you have within you. I don't see anything more courageous than that, to be quite honest.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing. What about you,
Mm.
Melanie? Somebody hear you
Can
right
I
now and say, "Yep, you were definitely my hero." How
can
can I
I
work
say
with you?
one thing to Jenifer first?
Yes, yes,
I
sure, of course.
love it. Writing your book was like, taking all of the clutter and all of those feelings and putting them on paper and letting them go. I'm a huge fan of journaling, so I love that that your journey or your journaling or both became a book. I think that's wonderful. People can find me at Melanie Cohen podia.com. I am also all over the socials as thoughtfully coaching. And I mean all the socials.
Okay. And okay, so what is your biggest takeaway from this conversation today, Melanie? You had to share.
I'm First of all, I'm so happy to be here. And not just as a guest, but like also being able to be like a fly on the wall,
Mm.
listening to the both of you talk. So that was fantastic. My big takeaway is it's going to come from Jenifer again. Like, that idea of one, you know, um, I can't think of a better word than repair, to repair the person by allowing, to release. And, my takeaway on a daily basis is the more successful my clients are, the better I feel. But I also have to remember that they then have to make the decision to follow through on the goals that they're setting and everything. So my client's failure is also my success because they're learning to
Mm.
process in a safe environment to do those things.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna jump to you, Jennifer. Same question for you.
Again, I also would reflect Melanie and say that I really enjoyed being here. And, Asher, you're very open, which is lovely. And my takeaway is honestly, like watching you, Melanie, one thing that I keep getting, right, is like the joy you have within you just kind of radiates through. So I think your clients have to be super lucky to work with you because you just embody the space in such a bright, beautiful way. And so, like, you can't get that better than that. So your
Thank you.
authentic self is showing through. So that's
Mm.
lovely.
No, thank you. And
Thank
if you had to answer this question, Jennifer, what is that one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy? If you had to share that, what would that be?
Oh, my two biggest triggers, I guess I would say, lying and entitlement. Those are like my two big triggers in life.
Lying and entitlement. Why those two, by the way?
Um, so as a kid, I was lied to constantly, and I kind of never knew like who was telling the truth, if anyone. And so being confused and not having a safe space is a very bad thing in my view. And then also the entitlement. Living in America,
Mm.
I think we encounter quite a bit of entitlement. And I think it's so detrimental because anyone who ever places themselves above another person doesn't really understand a whole lot about life.
Mm. That was quite profound. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Melanie, same question. What is the one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy?
I would love to just steal Jennifer's answers. But I'm gonna talk like a true New Yorker now. I can't stand it when you are leaning on the horn because leaning on the horn does not mean the car in front of you is going to move. Like, and so for me, it's like when people are impatient because that's what someone is when they're, like leaning on the horn like that. I find impatience very frustrating. And that's interesting that you said being lied to. I feel like I feel the same way. And I think the more entitled people are, the more lies they tell to other people.
Mm. You guys are hit those two things really, really good. Oh my God. Well, I do want to thank both of you for coming on and sharing your story and honoring the theme of failure and really tapping into your history. And something that I was thinking about when both you was talking about the inner child piece. That piece resonated with me a lot because I realized that oftentimes, we think we matured, but our maturation process sometimes takes longer than others. And you get to being a grown person and you're still a kid because that version of you is still down there really crying out and taking control of your whole life. You don't recognize it. So when I see people actually go back and look at their experience and own it and consider it their intellectual property now so they can kind of take it forward and use it to add value to other people's lives, when you can start doing that, then I know you really recognize what life is all about. And I can see that in both of you, that you actually own your history, you're taking responsibility for your past. And therefore, that's why you seem so confident about your future. I felt that. So any last word before we close out today?
Just grateful, thankful, really. So thank you for allowing us to be here.
Yes, you're
Yes.
welcome.
Ditto, same, everything she said.
Yeah. All right. And you tune into Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And today you've got wisdom from Melanie and Jenifer from their long journey of on this planet to really owning their own lifestyle. And with that, folks, make it an awesome week.